All right, we're live and Draft Dialogue it's at a peak right now. I got to tell you, cabin fever is the term that I've coined for all the dialogue we got. Now, what are we, 3 weeks and 3 days away from the draft? And as much as I'm sure there's some anxiousness, there's some anticipation, there's maybe a little bit of distaste, and people want a resolution, and the uncertainty of not having control of the draft is probably something that some Texans fans are probably a little bit frustrated in. I'll say this, it's better than the alternative. I don't know how we went a couple of drafts without having a first round pick the way we did. I don't know how we went, one draft without having a pick until the third round. So I guess the alternative is a little bit better. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2, Sports Radio 610. Where do we even start when it comes to all the dialogue that we're hearing leading up to the draft, and specifically the number one pick and what the Texans are going to do? Let's start with Albert Breer. Albert Breer put out in his column that the Texans were close to a deal with the Chicago Bears. This is the second that we've heard of this from a reporter. Peter King actually put a name to it, mentioned Ryan Poles. So there's reason to believe that, although there is some interesting things that Peter King said, PETA, that we'll get to in a sec. But Albert Breer says this, and what that tells you is that the Houston Texans like one quarterback more than the other. It's really that simple. I didn't believe that Carolina traded up with the idea of evaluating other quarterbacks, but you could maybe try to sell that and maybe say that they didn't know the exact quarterback they liked. But in this case, the Texans trading up from 2 to 1, that tells you that they like one of these guys more. So there's a chance that they will be disappointed, or they will, quote, settle for their second choice. Now you can say, well, Bryce Young is not as good as CJ Stroud, or CJ Stroud is not as good as Bryce Young. The Texans clearly feel that one is better than the other, and there's a chance, although there shouldn't be, we won't go back to the Indianapolis thing where they should have set Brandon Cooks, but there's a chance that the Texans will be, quote, settling. That's just the reality of that. If you believe this, and I don't see any reason to believe that Albert Breer would make this up. And I don't know, I like to play follow the source. I like to try to get to the bottom of some things when it comes to following who's telling reporters what, because I think it's good to inform the audience. I think it's good to have an informed opinion. And I think it's important in this day and age of NFL media where reporters are buying favors from agents, and there's certain teams that tell certain reporters things. I think it's important to follow source. Are Albert Breer and Nick Caserio close? I mean, I know they've known each other for a long time. Could Nick Caserio, maybe, if we want to dive extra deep into it, could Nick Caserio be kind of trying to CYA, cover your ass, and at least get it out there that he at least tried to get Bryce Young, despite the madness that happened at the end of the season, that he at least made an attempt? Could that be possible? I don't know. But Albert Breer put it out there, and I tend to believe Peter King when he's putting an actual name to it, and I believe Albert Breer when he says this. And to me, the takeaway from it is that the Texans clearly like one of these quarterbacks more than the other. So that's just kind of where that is. Next example of dialogue, cabin fever. And by the way, subscribe and like when you leave here. Just go ahead and like, comment, I try to answer as many of the comments as I can. I'm marking some of y'all's comments. Some of y'all are on one today. But the next piece of dialogue as Cabin Fever continues, we're just ready for the draft. This one was interesting. Could the Texans actually have a choice between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud at 2? This seems a little bit ridiculous to me. And I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about Tony Pauline. That's not to be disrespectful or anything. But as far as like Tony Pauline, I don't know. I know last year, I'll give him his credit. I think he was kind of on the Travon Walker thing. And I know that Tony Pauline, he's obviously pretty connected. He's been doing it for a while. But the notion that, and his report was that, and he works for Pro Football Network, so I want to give him credit. He believes that Frank Reich likes Anthony Richardson, and that if Frank Reich had his way, that Anthony Richardson would be the number 1 pick of the draft. I just find that really hard to believe. And the other thing for me is this, and this is what I said today on the show. If you missed it, you can fire up the Odyssey app and check it out. Why would Dave Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, give Frank Reich the decision to pick the quarterback? And the example I used is, would you hire Bill O'Brien and let him be general manager and let him oversee personnel? I think most of you are yelling at your computers and you're probably saying, F no, hell no. Put it in the comments. I can already see it coming down. But would you hire B.O.B. and let Bill O'Brien be in charge of personnel? The answer is no. So why would Dave Tepper let Frank Reich, who 2 years ago was pounding the table for Carson Wentz and basically lost his job because he believed in the ghost of Carson Wentz? I think the Indy ended up, and they flipped it nicely. Like, there was nice damage control, but he ended up basically pounding the table for Carson Wentz. Why would you let Frank Reich make the decision? And I also find it hard to believe that Frank Reich wants to draft Anthony Richardson. Again, Tony Pauline, I don't know enough about him to question anything. I can't really play follow the source with Tony Pauline. So I mean, no disrespect. A lot of times you get told stuff for whatever reason. Even if it is true, and let's give Tony Pauline the benefit of the doubt, even if it is true, if I'm Dave Tepper, the moron who pounded the table for Carson Wentz in the revival, and I'm sure that could be hindsight for me. I wasn't like saying that Carson Wentz was completely fried. I thought maybe Indianapolis could figure something out with them, although they looked good for a while. But why would Frank Reich have the decision, be able to make the decision to do something that crazy? I just don't believe that. Next piece of dialogue with Cabin Fever. Did Josh McCown and Deshaun Watson prevent the Texans from getting a quarterback? And I'm going to have to explain this one. Peter King, who, my God, he says some really weird things. When he's putting name to what he says, I think there's a little bit of validity. But I know this. There are some guys that are just writers and they should never speak, or they should limit how much they speak. Like NFL Hall of Fame writers, like you'll have them on, you'll be like, dude, what are you saying? Peter King said something like, and you can go check it out. It's on his podcast. But Peter King said that he talked to someone with knowledge about what goes on inside the Texans building, and that person said that the Texans could avoid CJ Stroud because of his representation. And he has the same business guy as Deshaun Watson and Brian Burney, and he has the same agent in David Mulligetta. But then Peter King, which is fine. Like if someone close to the building told Peter King that, that's fine. But then he said, I consider that a straw man argument. What? Like if you just heard it on the internet or something like that, or you can say that like a radio host or someone said it, then that can be a straw man argument. But you said, and you can go back and listen, it was our 11 a.m. segment today on the Odyssey app. If you want to hear the actual Peter King audio, I'm not going to play it on YouTube. I'm not going to deal with the copyright stuff. But Peter King said that he talked to someone with knowledge inside the building and then said he questioned the CJ Stroud thing because he thinks it's a straw man argument. You talk to someone with knowledge inside the building, but you think it's a straw man argument? Huh? So do they have knowledge inside the building or what, sir? Maybe he just needs to, I don't know. Peter sometimes will say stuff and it just doesn't make sense. But look, as someone who makes a living misspeaking rapidly, I guess I can understand, but that doesn't make sense. I talked to someone with knowledge of what goes on that knows people inside the building in the line of thinking, and that's a straw man argument. Is it information or is it a straw man argument? Either way, it's info. I don't get that. So Peter King said that he brought up the Deshaun Watson representation. He also brought up Josh McCown, and he said that he talked to some people around the league that told him that Josh McCown thought a lot of Bryce Young and that he thought that he had the skills to overcome his size. Bro, he said it on a podcast. Like he said it on a podcast, dude. Like what do you say? Like everybody heard that. Hell, we talked about it when it happened. Like as soon as Josh McCown got hired by the Carolina Panthers, the first thing I did, and I'm sure the first thing a lot of people did that produced content for the Texans was go look at Josh McCown's podcast, his old podcast where he did film sessions, and look at what he said about Bryce Young and look at what he said about CJ Stroud. So what? Like everybody heard that. And how can it be a straw man argument when it comes to the Mulligetta thing and the Brian Burney thing? I'm confused. I know if you did a Mount Rushmore of NFL writers, I know Peter King's face is going to be on there. But I'm confused. I don't understand what he's saying. Everybody heard Josh McCown say that, sir. I mean, everybody. Are you talking to people that know what's going on inside the building, or you think it's a straw man argument? It's okay. Like the other thing is this, and I think McClain can do this. McClain's going to join us tomorrow at 11 after D'Amico speaks, and we'll get into what D'Amico says on here. We'll definitely post a video of that. But like, it's okay for Peter King to just have an opinion, like based on what people are saying. You don't have to like act like you're inside. Because a lot of times when guys try to overcompensate and they try to say like I'm talking to guys inside, you kind of look weird. Like you get caught in unnecessary lies. Because Peter King can pick up the phone and call anybody. Sometimes you just don't know, especially as PR departments change, and you're not getting free tours of the facility, and you're not getting unlimited information. Go back a few years. Check that out. 2020. There's a reason Peter King was so upset with like the change in things around here. So it's okay not to know, and it's okay to have an opinion because it's a respected opinion. It's a battle-tested opinion. It's an opinion that has covered more football than anyone will ever cover. So it's okay to be like John McClain and say, no, in my opinion, I don't think that's right. You don't have to say, I talked to people inside the building and then basically combat a straw man opinion. It's contradictory. Makes you look kind of washed up. And the McCown thing, we all heard that, sir. We all heard that. And it also buries his good content, like the Ryan Poles report and stuff. So I just don't understand what exactly he's saying. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe that's just me though. But I didn't quite get it. Other noise during Cabin Fever. Steve Smith and Michael Lombardi continue to love up on Bryce Young. And I got something to say about that here in a sec. But Steve Smith basically has said on the Underdog podcast, and he had James Palmer on, and James Palmer had some good information. This is probably one of the best, I would say one of the best draft podcasts that I've listened to. That's not, just going completely in the sticks. Leading up to the draft. So I strongly recommend the Underdog podcast, specifically the episode with Steve Smith and James Palmer. I thought it was excellent. Shout out to James Palmer, who used to work here in H-Town. But Steve Smith just loves Bryce Young. Like he salivates over Bryce Young. You saw it on NFL Network. Steve Smith went in depth on Bryce Young. He said that when it comes to processing, that CJ Stroud is not in the same stratosphere as Bryce Young. Said it's not even close. James Palmer kind of countered, talked about, CJ, it's not his feet, which is important. Like his feet are in the right place when it comes to processing. And he was also very complimentary of Bryce Young's processing, compared CJ Stroud to Dak, which I think is a pretty good comparison. And I know it's a polarizing topic because people in Houston hate the Cowboys, et cetera. And Dak Prescott's kind of one of those guys. But if you could get Dak Prescott, a quarterback of that quality at 2, when you have extra picks, might not be the worst thing. But Steve Smith loves Bryce Young. He says it's not even close. Michael Lombardi, he was on McAfee's show, and he doubled down on what he's been saying for months, that it's really not tough, that Bryce Young is the best quarterback. Bryce Young is better than all of them, and that Bryce Young is the right call. He said the tape doesn't lie, and this isn't like one of these fake Twitter scouts that says they're watching tape and they're watching highlights. This is Michael Lombardi, who's watching a lot. Says a lot of crazy stuff too. But Steve Smith and Michael Lombardi, they continued their love fest for Bryce Young. Basically said that the decision is not difficult. CJ did get some love though from Bruce Feldman. Bruce Feldman, one of the most plugged in college football reporters, as we continue to go through the noise with the cabin fever going on. Bruce Feldman said that CJ Stroud is the best pick. Actually called him the safest pick. Talked about durability, talked about all the stuff you typically hear, talked about his ability to process information, arm talent, all the good stuff that you hear when people are talking about CJ Stroud. Bruce Feldman gave him that love, but the NFL guys, Steve Smith, Lombardi, they continue to love up on Bryce. And we had a shift in odds too, that was probably a little bit more significant than last week's. Bryce Young at Caesars. Caesars is pretty much half the Vegas casinos on the Strip. Shout out to the north side of the Strip. That's my hood right there when I go to Vegas. All the way up and down from Planet Hollywood up to the Link, and across the street stuff. That's Caesars. They have Bryce Young at a -130 as a -130 favorite. And this just could be equaling out. It's not like a large enough favorite to where you basically say that's a wrap. But Stroud is at +100. So you have Bryce at -130, Stroud at +100. And the way I feel about it, I just feel like right now the Texans are at the mercy of the Carolina Panthers making the wrong choice. Because I think Bryce is him. I think Bryce is the dude. I think Bryce Young is the best quarterback in this draft. I think that it's interesting that there's kind of a movement now where we know that Nick Caserio, or I think we can safely believe that Nick Caserio tried to trade up to 1 with Chicago. And now there's talk that maybe they might not draft a quarterback, which the people who assumed that the Texans were going to take a quarterback no matter what. On one hand, you look at it as you have extra draft picks, so maybe it's worth taking the quarterback. But on the other hand, if they like someone so much more to where they were willing to trade up, could that mean they don't draft a quarterback? I don't know. Um, I guess we'll find out once this cabin fever ends. Now, there are theories going out, and Sneakers Most Wanted just put it out. And I'm glad you brought this up, sir or ma'am. Um, the Panthers bluffing so that they can trade with the Texans. Here's the thing with that. And look, I don't have any like problem with speculating anything and everything during draft season. I like the dialogue. I don't know how we went without the draft dialogue when we did with King Bill. But my thing is this, and Bruce brought it up. Yes, said Texans Cap brought it up. Once it's kind of public knowledge that the Texans like Bryce Young, if Carolina calls you, doesn't that immediately tell you that they're lying? So what would the point be of Carolina bluffing? They don't have to bluff. I see a lot of people saying it. Just I would love to have it explained to me. And maybe I'll ask Cap if he can come on. I'm gonna ask Cap if he can hop on real quick. I'm gonna text Cap. Um real quick. All right, I'll see if Cap comes on here and explains how this would make sense. Um he might be putting the kids to sleep or something like that. But I just don't see how, from Carolina's point of view, that it would make sense for them to bluff. Why? They don't have to. They're in control. Now you say, well, they want to get an extra pick. Okay. But you want to get an extra pick. Well, then why? Well, then once you get the call, once you make the call, doesn't that immediately discount any? Doesn't that discount any like belief that you're serious? Like I don't know how they can bluff. Unless they're willing to and unless they're willing to trade back even further than where the Texans are. And again, all speculation is fun speculation. All right, I'm gonna get Cap in here in a sec. I just sent him the link. This is some on the go stuff right here. But I don't understand the theory. So we'll get Cap in here in a sec, and I'll get him to explain the theory. I don't know how he's gonna do it though. The final thing, and this hurts me, as a Bryce Young is him guy, and not all of you are Bryce Young is him guys, so I can understand. But as a Bryce Young is him guy, man, if you are that, let me give you some advice real quick. Do not, I repeat, if you are a Bryce Young or bust guy and you want Bryce Young to be a Houston Texan, do not, I repeat, do not watch the On the Clock with the Mannings about Bryce Young. Good God. Because no matter how you look at it, whether it's what's I don't want to get mad because I feel like Carolina's going to take him, or I don't want to stress out because I don't even want to contemplate the possibility of Carolina taking him. Do not watch it, man. You will feel like you will feel like God is coming to the NFL if you watch the Mannings talk about Bryce Young. Now, this is the one thing I am intrigued for is I do want to see and hear what they say about CJ Stroud. I haven't like the Stroud episode, haven't seen yet. But if you're a Texans, I'm a Bryce Young guy. Whoo, don't watch that. Do not watch the Mannings talk about Bryce Young. You will stress out and you will feel like the second coming of Jesus is coming to the NFL. That is how much the Mannings love up on Bryce Young. And they actually, I want to give Wade Smith, I want to give Smitty some credit. 12-year NFL vet, my friend, former Texans Pro Bowler Wade Smith. I did a show with Wade Smith 3 months ago. This was right after the season, and he compared Bryce Young to Joey Burrow. And the text line was immediately saying, "Oh my! Wow! How do you get to that comparison? What the hell is that? You're comparing a little guy, a little short guy, to Joey Burrow." Peyton Manning did the same thing. As Eli Manning sat there and agreed. Painful. Don't watch it. Don't watch it. Now, if you like pain, go ahead. If you like stress, go ahead. But I'm just telling you, man, don't check it out. All right, I got Texans cap here. Look at that. Look at that guy. Cap.
What's going on?
Before bringing up your theory.
Oh, okay.
And my question was, how would it work for Carolina to bluff the Texans if the second that Carolina calls, knowing that the Texans like Bryce Young more, and I think we're safe in saying that, why would it even work? Because at that point, the Texans would know that they're bluffing.
Well, I would think that the plan would be to get Houston to call them to make the move. I don't know that Carolina is going to reach out to Houston because that exactly what you're saying. That would indicate that they know that it would be a bluff. So I think at this point, it's just, they're going to try to bait Houston into making the phone call, and hopefully Nick never makes that phone call.
Okay. I mean, I can be sold on that. Are you thinking, because I've talked about cabin fever, are you thinking that it's still not going to be Bryce Young at 1?
I don't think it is. I'm gonna die on that hill. I'll probably get a million messages about 7:30 come that Thursday night telling me I'm, hey, you were wrong, and wouldn't be the first time. But I feel like this is just a big old smoke screen, a big old show that Carolina is putting on just to bait Houston up and try to get, whether it's just to get pick 33, or, whatever it may be. But that's just my read on the situation. I talked to a couple of people in Carolina that cover the team, and they're all still feeling like it's CJ Stroud for them. And I think you just start putting all those tea leaves together, things you hear locally outside of Houston. It just shows me that Houston is all in on Bryce Young, and Carolina is probably looking towards to go CJ Stroud, and that would work out perfectly for Houston.
Yeah, it would, at least me. And there's some people that
me too,
are, not Bryce Young guys. I've talked about all the dialogue that's happened today, and I went through it at 11. So you have Michael Lombardi and Steve Smith saying this isn't a hard decision. You take Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Mannings just loving up on Bryce Young. I almost felt like that should have been X-rated with how they were talking about Bryce Young. Like, I felt like I was almost watching a porn with how much the Mannings were loving.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that. I saw your tweet, so I'm gonna have to go back and watch it.
Don't
Probably get me all hyped up.
It'll stress you out. But I do want to see how they talk about CJ because they could just be John Gruden loving everybody. And I miss Gruden QB camp too. So it was the first one I saw. So
Yeah,
maybe
we
they're
need to
gonna
see
talk
more of
about
it to see
everybody.
how they're talking about everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I do got to see the rest of them. So I got to see that. Peter King had some interesting stuff today. And I said that I think like, did you hear what he said? Or
No,
did you just read it?
I read some of it. Him
Okay,
and Breer. Yeah.
what he said was really strange because he said that he talked to someone with knowledge of the situation of the thinking inside the building. And he said that they brought up that David Mulligetta and Watson's representation, or CJ Stroud's representation being the same as Watson, could be something that causes hesitation for them. But then he said he looked at it as a straw man argument. And my thing was this, like, how is someone telling you something about what's going on in the building a straw man argument? Like maybe it was like some sort of misspeak. I think a lot of times, like guys like Peter King, who he seems to take himself pretty serious and he seems to like want to put himself on a pedestal.
Mhm.
They're kind of hard to just, it's kind of hard for them to just come out and say, I'm hearing some of the dialogue and seeing some of the dialogue and I disagree with it. So sometimes you like make yourself look weird, but it doesn't like, it didn't make sense. It didn't seem like inside info. And from what I've heard from people pretty close to the situation and what I've heard from people as close to the situation as possible, I don't think it's true. Like, I don't think David Mulligetta is going to scare them from drafting CJ Stroud. So it seemed like Peter kind of caught himself trying to act like he was above participating in the cabin fever dialogue and then kind of like making himself look a little bit silly along the way.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think the Mulligetta situation, I mean, it's at the end of the day, he's a very high profile agent. It's not going to be the last time that you're going to interact with him on some level, whether it's this draft, the next draft, free agency, or whatever. So the team's got to make it work with him if they end up going with CJ Stroud, and hopefully that relationship in that situation would go along just fine if they ended up with CJ Stroud. So I'm curious who they have rated as quarterback 2 on their board. I really am for Houston. I don't know if it's Stroud or Levis, to be honest. I don't really have a read on that just yet, but it just makes me wonder. When you see Zerline have his wild mock last week, and then you see
people get too upset about mock drafts.
I know, they're so funny. And then you saw, Albert Breer today talked about, I think if Young went first, maybe Houston would have tried to trade out of 2, which makes me wonder.
Which I would rather do than draft Will Anderson. Yeah. Like I would rather, and it's not a knock on Will. I would just rather
he's just
stockpile pick, stockpile talent, and maybe end up with like a Tyree Wilson or something like that if you're not going to take a quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know that there's that much of a drop off between the top 3 or 4 edge guys, between Anderson, Van Ness, Wilson, however you rank those players. And I'm with you there. I think a trade back from 2 would be just fine. And I think you can maybe target a quarterback later, or however that works out. But it was a lot of smoke out there today, and it's getting wild. And considering we're still 2.5 weeks away from the draft, and it's just it's a bit overkill. It's almost. What
about Pauline? Pauline saying that Frank Reich might like Anthony Richardson. I don't believe that.
No.
And if I'm Dave Tepper, you're not doing that to me, sir. You were pounding the table for Carson Wentz the other day. I don't believe that. And don't you ever, by the way, say it's overkill, because we had to go without draft talk for a couple of years. So don't you ever
That's fair. That's true.
Don't you ever say that again. Try to sit through the first 2 rounds and talk about it on the radio for 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you ever say there's overkill. See, I might get to a point 5 years from now where this is overkill, but with the O'Brien Easterby era where I had to sit on my ass and try to like talk about the draft where it had no impact on the Texans at all. But man, the 2020 draft had to sit there and or 2021, you had to sit there and watch Trevor Lawrence get picked by Jacksonville, them take Travis Etienne, and then you had to sit around till the 3rd round and like break down Davis Mills. That is hell. This is not hell.
I get it. No, it's fun. And maybe overkill was the wrong word, but it's just there's so many new theories, and I know the Texans are getting a good laugh out of some of them that they read out there, and they enjoy it as well. And, it's just gonna, every day it's something different, and it's just gonna be like that all the way up until draft night. And the NFL's got to be loving it, and I'm sure the fans are probably enjoying all the conspiracy theories and whatever opinion you may have on the situation, including mine. And so, but yeah, the Anthony Richardson thing, from what I'm hearing, like some teams don't even have him on, in the top 10 on their boards or anything like that. It's a very wide divergence of a read on him. Some have him really high up and some have him really high down or really way down.
It was like Malik Willis first round talk. So
God, that was crazy.
It almost seems like I've kind of fallen victim to where after last year, I told myself, I'm never believing these mother truckers when they talk about quarterbacks anymore after this. This is the worst. This is a credibility killer for all the people who talk about quarterbacks. And now I'm finding myself, oh, well, is there going to be 4 in the first 4? Is there going to be 5? Could Malik Hooker or not Malik Hooker, Hendon Hooker play himself into the first round too? Are we going to have 5 quarterbacks selected? Like I'm falling for it again, man.
Somebody from Ryan McChrystal, he had tweeted out today that if anybody could get him a prop bet on QBs taken in the top 10, and if it's 2.5, he's taking the under. Yeah. So that was pretty interesting. So I don't, first, today we saw where the wide receivers are not, other than Jackson Smith and Jigba, none of them were graded as high as some of the teams, or the teams don't have them graded as high as some of the mock drafts do. And then you're starting to wondering if QB is starting to fall down the board a little bit between Richardson and Levis, and maybe it pumps up the defensive backs and the edges. So the draft boards, mock draft boards are going to change drastically in these next 2 weeks. And it's, we're here. I'm here for all of it, here for all the chaos. Bring it all on. I mean, I'm excited. It's going to be so much fun.
Smith and Jigba's my dog, dude.
I know. You've been all over it, man.
I love Jackson Smith and Jigba from
Rockwell, everywhere.
Baby. Shout out to Nelson's Fireworks.
He
ran that place for 15
man.
years, sir. Yeah, everyone. It's deja vu. I think the Jefferson comp. I think Pro Football Network laid it out perfectly. How you had Terrace Marshall on the outside, and you had Jamar Chase, and Jefferson lined up majority in the slot, and he was labeled just a slot guy. And here he is, the best wide receiver in the league, and he's the 5th wide receiver taken in his draft class. Smith and Jigba. I don't recommend watching high school highlights as like, the end all be all, but they were lining him up on the outside just fine. And he was running fades, and he was running posts, and he was running slants and all that, hitches, like all that. And then he went to Ohio State, and they had 3 first-round picks playing with him. So what are you going to do when you're elite in the slot? You're elite in the slot. And what are you doing? What's the point? Now, I do think that, and this is the other thing that I think might hurt Smith and Jigba, or might have hurt Smith and Jigba, is I think Alabama kind of did this for Will Anderson this year. I think Alabama, they still used him to win, but I think they were lining him up in more places to like help him prepare for the next level, to where maybe the production wasn't as like high, but they were moving him around to where I think it made him a better player. Probably just didn't put up the stats that a lot of people wanted him to. I think this year, if Smith and Jigba had played all the games at Ohio State, I think they probably would have let him line up on the outside a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And I think it would be beneficial to just have that pure athlete that can play everywhere, whether it's on the X side, underneath, on the Z, we're in the slot, moving Mechie around. You got Robert Woods, you can move around a little bit because, he can do a little bit of everything. Nico Collins can be your outside guy. So I think that would be a pretty strong receiver core.
Nico Collins can what?
Can play on the outside.
Oh, you said be the outside guy. Like when you
not guy.
I'm like, oh, okay.
No, not like that. I meant where he can play.
Oh, okay, yeah. Mechie is someone that I'm not like. First of all, he's not Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like no matter what, like let's not take it too far. And like what the Texans need, they need playmakers that scare other teams. So Mechie could end up being a fine player. I'm not putting expectations on him just because of everything he's been through.
Yeah, I
But
think that's just an added bonus at this point if he is able to play and play well, and you just find a
yeah,
way for both of them to be on the field.
but he
You would
ain't
hope.
JSN. He ain't
Right.
JSN.
Yeah,
There was no one like even last year before we knew that he wasn't going to play and he was going to go through what he went through. He, I don't even think he would like try to say that. Like he's not the caliber of Jackson Smith and Jigba.
yeah.
He can be a very good player, but he should not prevent you from drafting Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, last year's wide receiver corp, he would have been very exciting, but this year if you added JSN, then even if he becomes your wide receiver 4 or whatever it may be, that's still a quality player, quality depth, and you find a way to build an offense around that to have those players on the field. So
Yeah, and Mechie's a solid player. I also think that, the second and the thirds, that's kind of a money spot for receivers too. I
yeah,
could see them like even if they took JSN, if they just wanted to say F it and take Mims or I mean, that's kind of like where the value is going to be. And this is going to happen. Like it's going to happen. So there's going to be the first round is going to conclude. We're going to all gather. We're going to talk about it. We're going to cuss and discuss it. And we're going to go to sleep talking about who's going to be the top guy at 33. And there's probably going to be a receiver that you're saying, should they take Quentin Johnston? Should they take Marvin Mims? Should they take, I don't know if Addison's going to fall that far or not. That could go either way.
yeah,
I don't know where that's
Flowers,
going.
Hyatt. I mean, there's a
Flowers,
lot
I
of
don't know that Flowers gets out. I think
yeah,
Flowers
he's gonna go in the
is
first.
safe in round 1 right now, but I could see Addison, Johnson, and again, who knows? But I could see those guys, us going to sleep and saying, damn, should they do it?
Yeah.
And then I could also see them passing on him, and then all of a sudden we get to the third round. It's like, damn, he's still there.
I mean, the team is in the position where they could draft almost anybody at any position, and it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of holes, and you just want athletes, you want playmakers on this squad, and if that means moving on from Nico Collins 2 years after drafting him, then so be it. I mean, you want the best players that you can have.
Yeah. What do you think of corner at 12? Cole Thompson.
I have no problem with that because Steven Nelson's going to be. He's only got
right. Not just this year. It's a chess
yeah.
move because it's going to
You've
be
got
one of your main needs next year.
right. You don't want to have to reach for it in the following year. And if a good cornerback, if it seems like Christian Gonzalez is going to go pretty early, but if Witherspoon or Porter Jr. or one of them are there 12, I have absolutely no issue with taking that cornerback. And if he starts over Nelson, hey, Nelson is all of a sudden very good depth. If he's not ready, you start Nelson, and then you can bring him in, halfway through the season. So, yeah, I'm all on board on that, especially with Nelson being a free agent after 2023.
Seems like Gonzalez is the favorite corner among the scouts.
He has flown up the board.
The nastiness, all that seems that way. Witherspoon is starting to get kind of dissected for his size, 5'11". Although I think someone's going to fall in love with him. And then Porter just seems like, I don't know. I don't want to say, I don't know. I can't figure out Porter because I could see Porter being a guy who goes in like the top 7 just out of nowhere. And you're just like, oh, okay. Someone really liked him. And then I could see him falling to like, I don't know, freaking Pittsburgh or something like that. And they're like, have the legacy thing. He's kind of the wild card though.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that.
Corners are interesting. But the thing about the corners is that if you have the chance, like if you're Nick Caserio and you're one of these guys who weighs like position value and stuff, it's not often that you have a chance to get the best corner in the draft at 12. So that's got to be a little bit interesting of a possibility for them.
Yeah.
They just want to line up the strength in the secondary.
Yep. I'm with you there, man. I would not hurt my feelings at all. Would not complain. I don't know if there's really any position I would complain about who they took at 12.
You would complain about running back. You hate
probably so. I knew that was coming. I set myself up for that.
So you would complain about that. So there would be that. That would be pretty interesting. The Bryce Young thing, though, I almost feel like it's to the point where it doesn't really even matter what you think of Bryce or CJ. It's just, to me, at this point, from a Texans point of view, it's do they like CJ enough to take him at 2? Because
Mm-hmm.
if Bryce Young falls in their lap, they're going to take Bryce.
Right.
But it's do they like CJ enough to take him at 2? What would your reaction be if they took Will at 2?
I would be a little disappointed. It wouldn't shock me, but I would be a little bit disappointed. And, you got to hope that the injuries that were reported from last year is what was holding back, and he can kind of return back to that 2021 form. But I mean, I'll go along with it, but it's not my choice. But I really don't know. If you're not big on Stroud, do you just take Levis? Do you try to trade back and get cute and try to take Levis a little bit further back in the draft? It's just, if you really like the guy, then take him. But I'm just not completely sold on him.
The other thing, though, is like, does having more picks make you more likely or less likely to, for lack of a better term, settle or roll the dice on a quarterback? Because you can make a case that you could look at the Jets who had extra ammo and say, well, we missed on Zach Wilson, but we're fine. Wasn't that big of a deal. Still believe we're a quarterback away. So do you do that? Or do you say, oh, well, we got all these picks, so we'll have X amount of first rounders next year, and we'll be able to be one of the teams that's most likely to be able to trade up? That's really
it's tough. The whole trade up thing next year is tough because you got to assume that the teams that are at the top of the draft are needing a quarterback.
At some point, though, man, it seems like everyone has a
you're gonna have to way over. Well, you're
going to have a top 5 pick for Cleveland. So Cleveland, you're going to have a top 5 pick that next year. So
I like that optimism. Yeah.
Then you can move up.
I've seen a few people with that opinion that I feel like a collapse is coming up there and Watson's just never going to make it back.
Yeah. He hates the cold weather, man.
Yeah. I'm surprised he chose that place.
Weather. Hey, LMAO says Young is becoming so overhyped. Man, if he goes to Carolina, I hope you're right. I just don't feel that way. I would love to feel that way. I just don't feel that way.
No, I'm all about it. Bryce Young train.
SVK asking who is a partner of a trade back from 2, though. Takes 2 to tango. Here's the thing. If people know that they're trading up for CJ Stroud, then you're going to have no problem finding a partner.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to be hard. Washington might be willing at that point to trade up, and then you're sitting there right there in the middle of the first to where you can trade back up if you want to. Atlanta might change the whole way they're looking at things. Hell, the Raiders might say, you know what? We'll move up there because we like Bryce and CJ. Maybe you trade for Garoppolo at that point. But maybe you do.
Garoppolo's deal is really just a 1-year deal with team decisions after the fact. So same with Seattle. You have 4 or 5 teams easily that could be looking. Titans are even talking about trying to move up. And
I don't know if the Texans would do that, but
that's fair. But the point is there's plenty of potential partners to make that move.
It's a lot harder for Arizona to trade 3 than it would be for the Texans to trade 2 with the possibility of CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
There would be some, because you're basically leaping Arizona at that point. The phone's going to be ringing off the hook. I just don't. Do you think they set this stuff up before?
I think there's discussions, same with, from what my understanding, way back to the Deshaun Watson trade. From my understanding, Rick Smith and Sashi Brown had that discussion well before the draft.
They had the relationship.
Yeah. And I do think that they have those conversations with various team partners, just maybe laying out some framework that if this situation comes up.
That was kind of what I was looking at 12 to 10. I look at Philadelphia as a potential partner because you have that relationship. You traded with them last year. I think they might like Bijan Robinson. They might feel like they have a decent chance to trade from 10 to 12, and there's a set price. I think it's a 3rd round pick. That's what it was when the Eagles traded up with the Cowboys from 12 to 10, which, by the way, how crazy is that was when the Giants were behind the Cowboys and the Eagles were behind the Cowboys, and the Giants and Eagles both wanted Devontae Smith, and the Cowboys basically said, all right, we'll take the 3rd from Philadelphia, trade back to 12. And oh, by the way, we actually wanted a corner, but we'll settle for Micah Parsons. So I mean, that all the Cowboys, like the Cowboys just, I don't want, they just
They're
have
such
these
good.
like
They're good
elite
drafters,
talents.
man. They're
No,
good
and
drafters.
Will McClay is one of the best drafters there is. Dude,
Yes.
hell, everyone made fun of the O lineman they drafted last year. And the dude looks like a Tyler Smith. And Tyler Smith is like going to be their left tackle of the future.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I go all the way back to the center, Frederickson, when they just got maimed for taking him in the first round. And he ended up being a fantastic center.
They didn't take Sharif Floyd. Everybody wanted him to take Sharif Floyd. I was there. I remembered it. And they took Travis Frederick. Got killed.
I remember.
Settled for it. And then they passed on Manziel and took the good Martin. Zach.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame Martin.
I love McClay's work up there, man. He's fantastic. I wish we could have gotten him, but it seems like nobody's ever going to be able to pry him out of Dallas.
No, I think he's 2 years away from being pried out, maybe one. That's what I heard. Kid just graduated.
You would know, yeah.
Divorced, and I think the kid just graduated. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think you might have a better shot, but then again, they might just give him the reins. It would be nice, but at least when they got Trevon Diggs in the second round, the Texans got Ross Blacklock.
That hurts.
This hurts.
Yeah.
How you living, dude?
I'm good, man. Staying
worn
busy.
out, tired.
Yeah. I consumed a little too much alcohol yesterday on Easter.
So
feeling the.
What were you sipping on? What'd you have? Did you up your consumption to 4 beers from 1?
Yeah, it was quite a few, and so I've been feeling the after effects of that. As I get older, I can't do these 2 a days two in a row anymore. So
tell me about it.
But and you'll get there when that new kid comes in. Your list.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there. I haven't been drinking.
But we're doing good, man. We're staying busy. I was out of town on vacation last week. That was nice. That's my wife and I. We separate away from the kids for once a year for like 4 or 5 days, and that's our mental reset.
There you go.
We were up at the Greenbrier. Got to see where the Texans did their training camp.
Nice place. There's some nice little hole in the wall restaurants out there too.
Yeah. No, we did. We had a good time.
Did y'all fly into Charlotte?
Yes.
I miss the Greenbrier. But the only problem with the Greenbrier is back when the Texans used to have camp there was, well, you're 40 miles out, but you're 2 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
All the mountain driving and all that.
Yeah.
Gives you a headache a little bit.
Yeah. We flew into Charlotte and then Charlotte over to the Lewisburg Regional Airport. So it was only a 15-minute drive from the airport to the resort.
Yeah. I'm just glad that the Texans have camp here now, though.
Yeah, I didn't get to go to. I mean, I wasn't credentialed back then anyway, but I don't know that I would have spent the coin to go out there.
That's expensive.
But it was cool to see it. We went on a off road. We get the Polaris, the side by side, went off road and mudding and all that. So it was right by that. Yeah.
Look at you, sounding country as hell.
Yeah,
mudding. All right, man. Well, I'll let you sleep off your hangover. Tell the people where they can find you. Tell the people about your channel, sir.
Oh, so the Cap and Trade YouTube channel, we got our boy Cody Stoots joining me this Wednesday.
Big Stoots.
So we'll have a good conversation about Bryce Young.
He's starting to lose hope.
Huh?
He's starting to lose hope.
Is he? Okay. Well, I'll try to bring him back. I'll try to rein him back in.
He's starting to lose Bryce Young hope.
All right. So we'll chat with him. But yeah, the Cap and Trade YouTube channel, and as always on Twitter @TexansCap. Don't hesitate to send me a message. Happy to discuss with anybody. And Landry, I hope you're doing well, bud.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well,
I'll be dialogue. Yeah. Hey, Gatorade and Alka-Seltzer. It'll get you going. Be straight.
I think just a good night of sleep will be the ticket for me. I'll be raring to go tomorrow.
All right, there you go. All right, guy.
All right, buddy.
Appreciate you.
Later.
It's my guy, Texans Cap. Here, hungover. Didn't know it was like that. And he's usually a pretty mellow dude, so I didn't know it was like that. Shout out to Cap. Shout out to all the people for the comments. Appreciate you. When you leave this place, how about a little bit of a like and a subscription? Business is picking up. Cabin fever is intensifying. Some people frown upon it. I don't. I love it. I embrace it. I don't know how you live without it. The draft, live for it. All kinds of stuff going on too. You got the Rockets. They just fired Steven Silas. I kind of think this has like Jack Easterby, Bill O'Brien type vibe where you got rid of the coach, and I wonder if the GM was part of the problem too. Not saying it's a proportional comparison. I just don't, Rafael Stone is now just basically wiping his hands clear of stuff. He's calling fake news like Jack did with all the reports. I think he called reporters lazy today. I would love to know which reporter. Maybe he's talking about media types. I think someone from every radio station has said the same thing, and I don't think the people are pulling it out of nowhere. But I wonder between like Woj, Tim McMahon, Brian Windhorst, Sam Amick, and Sham Sharina. I think Bontemps has talked about it. I wonder which one of these like top-notch reporters he's talking about like being lazy. I don't know. It's interesting. But Silas sucked. He was a bad coach, but I think Rafael Stone might be just as bad of a general manager. And let's be honest, does it even matter? Because once Harden comes here, he basically works for Harden anyway. So he's basically going to be a secretary. And he damn sure won't be at practice. Like he allegedly lazily was. I also thought the most interesting, I'll get out of here on this, was that Stone said that part of like one of the reasons, like one of the examples he used that they had a good culture was that the players hang out together away from the facility. What? That's where you're going? Whatever. Enough about that. Astros got the dub today. The bats appear to be back. Framber Valdez did his thing once again. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, little known fact, his brother's actually on the Pittsburgh Pirates. So draft crush. I was crushing as I was watching the shows today because I was thinking about JSN lining up in the slot and outside for the Texans. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Cabin fever is upon us. Draft speculation is upon us. John McClain going to join the show tomorrow at 11 o'clock. D'Amico Ryan speaks at 9:30. You can hear that on Sports Radio 610. We'll react to it at 10. Fire up the Odyssey app and ride along. Appreciate everyone for coming through. And remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we are all in this together. Have a good one.